Hello, I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar. Today is how to present like a rock star virtually. And today is with Shannon Pauly. Shannon is a longtime friend. She's a coach. We've known each other as coaches. I have seen her present many times, both online, but also in person. I am thrilled that she's here answering our questions and your questions on how to present even better and in a virtual environment. Hello, welcome, Shannon. So today with Shannon, and that Shannon has been coaching a lot on executive presence and on how to give presentations. We're going to start with a pretty easy breezy question, which is, when people come to you for work like executive presence or for presenting better, what are the questions they usually ask? What are the things they most want to get better at?
Usually the things they want to get better at are being able to command a room, being able to influence by using presence. So either they see someone else who can do it and they say, I want that, or they can just sort of feel that when they're in front of a room, they're not quite capturing the energy and the attention that they want to. Maybe it's a female who's not getting as much airtime if she's on an all-male team. Maybe it's someone who's a little introverted, who's not so comfortable, or maybe it's just performance anxiety, which is, you know, as we read the data, it's more people are afraid of public speaking than death. So that that leads to a lot of questions, and that's where I jump in.
And when people come to you with questions like this, and so Shannon, make me a rock star presenter. Yeah. What is, and I'll sort of start off with this because our goal with this is 20-minute quick strategies. What is the one main thing, if you kind of look over your history, and just to give people a smidgen of your background, you are a former actor, you have training in presentation, you've been a coach for a long time. What is the one main thing? So for people, even if people have to drop off this call right now, what is the one main thing to be a better presenter virtually?
I think it's really hard to narrow down, but if I had to, I would say energy is the number one thing. So we know in positive psychology that energy is contagious. We also know that leaders tend to be really contagious with their energy, and it's something that people don't think about because they're too busy getting through their to-do list. The other thing about presenting virtually is now that we only have the neck up of you, people think, oh, well, I'll just wear my sweatpants, which is fine. I mean, I have a business mullet on right now, right? I have my fancy scarf and I'm wearing jeans and sneakers. But you have to both prepare yourself mentally for your mental energy to be present and physically, because the energy you have, it takes a little bit more effort to talk to the screen and to convey the person like you were talking right to them. It's a little more difficult than it is if you're in person.
Suppose you were coaching the people on this call, so literally the people on this call, yeah. What would you tell them to do in the few moments before their attendees are there on the call to get that energy, to bring that up?
Yeah, so I like to bucket it into three things, which is intention, attention, and tension.
Okay, so lots of tensions,
tension.
Attention. Okay.
Yeah, intention, attention, tension. So I'm going to go.
I'm going to do this. I like this. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to go in reverse order. So tension is the anxiety. And I get that a lot, that people feel anxious before they present. I had one client who was a sort of introverted accountant. She had to do a webinar for 500 people and she was terrified. So we went through some of the cognitive behavioral strategies to think about her thoughts. What are the thoughts that she's thinking? And I think one of the most salient pieces of research shows that when people don't know that you're nervous, and that if you as a speaker are told that no one can tell you're nervous, you are then less nervous. So that's the tension part, is to realize unless you have, you know, I don't hold a piece of paper so that it like shakes, or unless you have flop sweat, wear a jacket, you know, no one can tell that you're nervous. The second thing is attention. So for me, that's the hardest thing for me, is to shut off my email, is to be present, is to look at the little dot above your head as if it's my best friend because I really want to look at you. It's having that attention and being present. So whether that's meditating, centering, breathing, whatever you have to do to get present before a call, that is an essential time, and you just have to build it in. And the third thing is intention. So this is in acting, we talk about it as a super objective. So every character in a play has a super objective. And if you take Romeo and Juliet, which is one of the most famous plays, Juliet, her super objective for the whole play might be to control my own destiny. And then every scene that she goes through has another objective that fits into that overarching super objective. Like she, disobeys her parents. She goes to Friar Lawrence. She pretends to kill herself. She actually does kill herself. All these things that she does fits into this super objective. So you as a speaker, for every meeting that you're a part of, you have to think about, what's my objective? What do I want to do? What do I want the audience, the participants to feel at the end of this meeting? And usually we have you put it into an infinitive verb, to blank. And there's data that if you pick the most powerful verb, it activates your brain. It activates the neurons. So there was a research study done with monkeys in Italy where they had monkeys like kick a ball, then they had monkeys see someone kick a ball, and the same neurons in their brain fired. And then they tested it with humans, and they had them kick a ball, they had them see someone kick a ball, and then they had them read the word to kick, and the same neurons in their brain fired. So if you're picking a verb, if you pick a verb like to explain, to tell, well, that's pretty boring, and that doesn't activate your brain as much as if you pick the verb to inspire, to mentor, to motivate, to move, right? So you have to be thoughtful about, is this a meeting where it's right after we got the stay-at-home order, and maybe the verb is to console, to comfort.
Yeah.
So you have to be thoughtful as a leader, like, what am I trying to do for this meeting, for these people? And then it's something you can check in on and say, I see Senya's face. She just looked away. I'm wondering, like, is it working? How's she doing?
Is she inspired? Is she consoled? Those kinds of things.
Exactly. Is she inspired? And you can have the Brady Bunch, view of everybody to see how it's landing and how it's resonating.
So tension, attention, intention.
Right.
Or intention, I should have this goal, my super objective of, I want to at this meeting, my goal at this meeting, my super objective at this meeting is to inspire, to gather, to brainstorm, to bring together. So something about what I am doing towards.
Yes, exactly. It's a little, getting back to high school grammar, but the infinitive verb is really important because as an actor, you're always doing something. I'm not feeling sad. That's a result of what I'm doing. So if you're always driving forward with what you're trying to do, that energy comes through the screen and it comes through to the people you're talking to.
So at your point, now that you've done thousands of presentations, both virtual and in person, do you still do this, the super objective?
I think that it's become sort of, common, just improv for me. It just comes automatically. But for me, it's also, I break it down, especially if I have a keynote or a speech like that, I will break it down into different sections. So this will be interesting for you, as my favorite Russian. Stanislavski, who's the famous acting teacher, is my second favorite Russian. And he actually had his acting students break down the speeches in what he called beats. And so every acting school in America teaches a beat. So what's the first beat? So maybe the first beat of your meeting is to welcome, to connect. And then maybe the second beat is to motivate. What work are we going to do? What's the best thing that's happened? And the third beat is to inspire, to do more. The funny thing about the story is that it actually was mistranslated from the Russian, and that Stanislavski was only saying the word bit, but his
Like a
accent,
little, like a
right,
little
a
bit.
little, but his accent made us think it was word beat, and now every, acting school talks about beats.
Absolutely. Yeah. From my high school acting classes, I remember what's the beat you're on?
Yeah.
Of course, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Translation in our global world, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about what people come to you with. We've talked about the things. So thank you for the framework, the tension, attention, and intention. What is the biggest no-no? So if people might just naturally fall into something, what's the biggest no-no? And I'll give you an example. For example, when I talk to people about setting up their virtual workspace, I say the biggest no-no is don't have a window behind you. You're completely dark, like that's just so right. That. But what's the biggest no-no in being a presenter?
I mean, I have that too. Like, I hate people who are like, "Hi, here I am." You're like, don't ever be shot from below. Have it as high as you can. I think, yes, people don't think about what's behind them. Like, this is a set. I had a designer help me out with this office because I knew that I would be doing webinars. Now, the truth is that my no-no is that I'm lazy. And sometimes I reverse it and I have people staring at like my cords behind me because I'm sitting on this tiny chair so that the camera is high enough. And I'm like, I don't want to have to move my chair. So don't be lazy. Always have the camera high above you. But I think that it's not taking care of you and centering and being present before you start, because people are just, they're on calls all day. They feel like, I'm just going to launch into this other one. It doesn't really matter. As opposed to, if you take a deep breath in and out, that only takes a few seconds. The second thing, probably less common, is that people don't think about warming up. So if you are an athlete, you wouldn't start a marathon just like getting off the couch and then running a marathon, right? You would warm up your muscles. Well, the same thing is true for a presenter. These are your muscles. So I'm going to do an exercise with our people at home right now. And I'm going to have you try with me. And you're going to look silly, and that's okay. So I want you to take your tongue, and it's going to go in between your lips and your gums, and you're going to make a circle, okay? So you're going to make a circle 3 times clockwise. That feel really weird. Now go reverse. Okay. Now make your face really, really big. And make your face really small like a prune. Okay. Now I want you to pretend like you're being really nasal and you're speaking here from your nose and say, me, 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 me.
Me, like that?
Me, yeah.
I so hope that people on this call are doing this. I so hope they are. Me. Okay.
And now I'm going to do a tongue twister. So, because you have to warm up the lips, the tongue, the teeth, all those things you see in like spoof movies of actors, like we do all these things. Okay. All right. So I want you to repeat after me, Senya. What did you do to die today?
Thanks a lot. What did you do to die today?
At a minute or two to two.
A minute to two.
See, we started 2. For they'll beat a tattoo.
For they'll beat a tattoo?
At 20 to 2.
Oh my gosh, at 20 to 2.
At a minute or two to 2 today.
At a minute or two, oh my gosh, I'm going to try this. Okay, 1 second, I'm going to try this. At a minute to 2 today. 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 Am I doing it?
It's perfect. It's perfect.
Okay.
Did you stop my video on purpose?
No, let me bring it back. Hold on. Let me chat something to you and then bring it back.
Okay.
1 second. Okay, let me start your video. Hold on.
Okay.
Where am I going? Okay, there you are. And I'm getting your video. You ready?
I'm ready.
And okay, I've got us both back. All right, go for it.
You did great. So round of applause. I give you a really hard tongue
Okay,
twister.
I felt very uncomfortable and I haven't done this since high school. Okay.
But it's one of those things that, yeah, you wouldn't normally do, but you are, all of the nonverbals are just here. You've lost
Okay.
the rest of the body of nonverbals of your normal zesty self. So you have to not sound like you just woke up when you really did. You rolled
Yep.
out of bed. So this is something you can do. And it's fun. It also is a way to get your energy up as you're getting things started.
That's awesome. Okay, so things to not do. So you told us things to do, things to not do. I think I already forgot the first one. The second one is warm up your body, but the first one is don't be lazy, like actually set up, whether it's here or set up
Don't
with.
be lazy. Yeah, I'm gonna show you. So what people normally see is this terrible like cords, and I'm slightly backlit, and there's a window. Like, don't do that, because that's just me being lazy. So.
Okay, we have 3 more minutes and I have 1 or 2 more questions and then we're opening up to your Q&A, and I think we already have a question in queue. Okay, here we go. So I'm opening this up to Q&A in a minute, but before that, here's a question, probably either my last or second to last question, Shannon. What's one of your most successful executive presence transformations? What was the situation? What actions did you take? What happened as a result? And I ask this in order to give a little bit of a sense of, look, there is a before and there's an after when all of us are trying to improve in our executive presence.
Yeah, I think I think one of them was I had a very successful senior director at a professional services firm, and he was already very dynamic, and he was on NPR, and this is going to be a little controversial because poor Amy Cuddy got thrown under the bus for her research on power posing, as we in psychology know. The thing is that some of those things somatically, as an actor, we know that they work regardless of what the science says. Like having something in your sternum where like visualizing your sternum being open and upward, it counteracts what happens with, we normally have our phones and we collapse like this. Mm-hmm. So that's why you don't want to go into an interview and come like this, because it actually makes you feel less confident. Psychologically, we call that the outside in. So from inside out to outside in. Like inside out is how am I thinking about how I present? Outside in is collapsing. So he was in the car on the way to his NPR BBC interview, and he decided to do, his power poses in the back of the car. And he was like, I felt totally ridiculous. I wasn't sure that it was going to work, but you told me it was going to work. So he did, and he nailed it. And he sort of took it from a really high level to, an exponential level. And then he was a convert. He was like, I'm sold. So.
So it's these kinds of things. It's exactly what you did with my tattoo, and then also just really just getting in that place where you are even outwardly more confident than you may be inwardly.
Well, but it's all connected, right? I mean, that's why we get slightly annoyed when Marty Seligman talks about neck down interventions, because we know that it's all connected. But like physically, you can breathe better. Yes. When you're upward and open, and when you're collapsed, your lungs are collapsed and you can't breathe as well. So.
Last question before we open it up to questions. What is something you've worked on? So I've seen you present a bazillion times. I love you as a presenter. What is something you've actually had to work on?
For me, and I want to give a shout out to Brene Brown's a recent podcast she has. Part of the title is called Settling the Ball, which I didn't understand because my kids don't play soccer. But apparently it's like when kids play soccer, it gets up high and they start kicking. And she was talking about in the time of coronavirus that we really need to settle the ball and get centered and like go back to basics. And for me, it's as a presenter, I tend to have a lot of energy, and sometimes the introverts are like, whoa, like they need a moment. So for me, it's settling the ball and centering before I get started, and making eye contact with people in the room really anchors you. If anyone has ever told you to scan the room, to like scan above people's eyes, don't do that. That's terrible. It actually triggers the fear response in your brain. You want to land on someone's eyes that is warm and friendly, like Senya, and that way you actually feel more grounded, and then you're ready to present. So that's something I work on, settling the ball.
Okay, this was our 20 minutes from beginning to end. We are open to questions, but we just want to round this out and say you have heard today about what to do, and that is tension, attention, and intention. You've heard about what not to do, and that's don't be lazy. And what was the other one? Oh, actually warm up like an athlete. Warm up like an athlete. And we thank Shannon Polly very much, and she's going to be with us for another 10 minutes for your Q&A. But thank you for coming. We'll see you again. We have an awesome schedule, and you can see it on our website. But it's the schedule for the next 3 weeks of incredible coaches like Shannon giving us good content. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Okay, we're opening it up to Q&A, and we already have a Q or an A. Let's see, a Q. We have a lot of already. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, very helpful session. Let's see, you guys are saying great things, but what do you want to know from Shannon in your remaining 8 minutes with her? This is your like one-on-one coaching time, even though she can't see you. But what do you really most want to know?
I have a shout out. I would like, and see, this gets to Brene Brown's vulnerability, to the attendant who told me I had something in my teeth. Thank you. And that is something you need to check ahead of time. Make sure you don't have anything in your teeth. So that's a good learning. It's a good learning. I hope it's gone.
It's gone.
Right.
We have a question, a very direct question. Any thoughts on how a woman can present to men?
Great question. Obviously, it depends a little bit on context. What's the business context? What's the male-female context? I often tell women to get to the meeting room early and pick the power seat in the room. And if like at one of the ends is the power seat.
I have context from this person. It's asking for money from a male VC, a male venture capitalist.
Asking for money from a male VC. I think that the physical aspects of like, it's a balance of like height, having the heels but being grounded. I often tell people not to get too high in heels because it tips you forward and then you have to pull yourself back and you're sort of off balance. But you want to own your height, have a power color on. Just like on video, don't ever wear stripes because that tends to distract people. So have a power color, something you feel confident in, make direct eye contact. And the biggest complaint I get from men about female presenters is that they talk too much. So less is more. Say less, make your ask, and run through it ahead of time at least 3 times. Because the reason why actors rehearse for 8 weeks is because you have so much adrenaline running through your body on opening night. It's as much as someone who's in a car accident. So you have to rehearse it so well that your body knows it. So when you go in the room and the VC is late, or they're like, oh, we got to use this room that has no windows, you're not thrown off by any of it because you know it's rock solid. So I would say power color, rehearse, maybe stand instead of sit, and make it short.
We have a bunch of questions coming into you, but a follow-up from the same person. What is a power color?
Usually it's a jewel tone, a solid color. Jewel tones are like blue, green. I mean, it depends on your coloring, what you look good in. Some people look good in yellow. Senya has this beautiful orange jacket that she wears as like her power color. So it's something solid, something you feel confident in. Now, if you're in New York, everybody wears black. So maybe it's doing something different than everybody else. But that's what I would say.
Okay, so a sort of like a primary color or secondary color, one of these bright, almost single color, but like your scarf, maybe a little permutation in it, but basically one bright color.
Right, exactly.
Okay, very helpful. Yeah. Next question. What if you are doing this virtually and you're not in a room to pick a power seat? You're not there to pick that power seat. What should you do in terms of that same kind of dynamic?
Yeah, so the research on women in meetings is that if you speak say anything in the first 5 to 7 minutes, then you're more likely to have the confidence to speak again. But if you wait too long to speak, then you're less likely to speak. So you want to make sure you get your voice heard in the beginning. If it's knowing the question you want to ask, making it a really good question. But also maybe ahead of time, you can look at the agenda and see like, where am I on the agenda? Am I first? So that if everything gets bumped, I won't be bumped. And if not, maybe on the end, I'm sort of the peak end.
Okay, so really possibly try to be first or early on, either with your planned part of the talk or even just with an interjecting a comment. So you're there, you're recognized as a player.
Exactly. So it has to be a cogent comment early on.
We have so many questions coming at you. One person quickly says, I'm sitting here in my striped turtleneck. I will go add a scarf to cover the stripes. I've never heard that tip before.
It's true, because videos do weird things with people, and having like lots of stripes or intense patterns can, hit differently for different people.
So 2 or 3 questions. How much PowerPoint do you suggest using during a webinar? So if someone is presenting a webinar, actually, how much PowerPoint and how much of them?
The PowerPoint should definitely have more pictures than text, unless you have a lot of non-native English speakers, in which case you have to be conscious of the audience. And it also, about every 15 minutes, you have to have a poll, a breakout room, something interactive for them, a question for them in the chat panel, because if you do more than 15 minutes, you've lost them and they're checking their email.
2 more questions. How can I better connect with new colleagues whom I've never met before? So someone who might be starting a new job, or new colleagues maybe coming into their department or an acquisition. So given the current work from home situation, how can I connect better or present better to a group of new colleagues?
That's a good question. Well, I think that in this new normal, people are more comfortable with like the virtual coffee. And like Senya so brilliantly did with designing this for 20 minutes, I tell people, no one's going to refuse you 20 minutes. If you say, can I chat with you for 20 minutes? Then they're like, sure. It always goes to 30. And then they feel like, oh, I'm being generous. It went so well, I'm adding on. So I would say ask for a virtual meeting, have your own internal agenda of what you want to say, have done your homework of like look them up on Facebook, but don't go so far as to like Google stalk them. I made that mistake in an interview and I was like, oh my gosh, I did. I said, oh my gosh, I like went way deep. I was like, we both went on our honeymoon to the Seychelles. And she looked at me and I looked down at her hand and she had no ring. And I was like, oh no, she had been quickly divorced. It was terrible. Luckily, she was very nice and she still hired me. But
can I just say, like, all of us do that. We all do that. We are all like that just happens. That's part of life.
Yeah. No, it's true.
We have one last question for you in closing up. Somebody says, I'm an introvert and I don't enjoy public speaking, but when I do have to give presentations, my inner voice becomes really loud. Messages like the audience already knows what you're presenting, or they are judging your presenting skills. What advice do you have for calming these voices?
That's a great question. So I think that the misconception A is that actors or presenters who've done it a lot don't get nervous. That's not true. We do get nervous. We just look at it differently. We're like, oh, I'm nervous. Interesting. And instead of going, oh my gosh, this is terrible that I'm nervous. Like the thought about being nervous, Buddhism calls it the second arrow. Like you have the anxiety and then the second arrow is like being mad about being anxious. It's like the Buddha said, invite them to tea. Be like, oh, hello, annoying voices. Come to tea with me. I know you're going to be there. I'm just going to tell you that like you can sit over there and have tea while I'm doing this. Again, it goes back to the, people can't tell you're nervous. And the last thing I would say is that if your intention, your super objective is stronger than that voice, if you have a mission and a purpose, if you're saying, my job is to make these managers better people leaders so that their people don't suffer. Yeah. I am impacting a lot of people in this one moment. Then I'm thinking about, am I impacting send you right now? Is it working? Rather than it's like having the camera, as opposed to here, turning the camera outward.
So constantly just even looking for their facial expressions. Like you said, in the room, find the eyes, but even in a webinar, find that warm person.
That's right.
Not in a webinar, but in a Zoom meeting.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Delightful seeing you here. We'll see you all again tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Pacific. Look forward to it. Thank you so much, Shannon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.